I'm calling to order the Town of Essex Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, May 8th, 2025. Fantastic. So first, we have our agenda additions or changes. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda as currently posted? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Seconded.
Moved by Paula, seconded by Georgia. All those in favor?
Aye.
Agenda is approved. We now have public to be heard, and public to be heard, to be clear, these are comments that are not pertaining to something already on the agenda. So if you're here for an agenda item, this is not the time for you to say your piece. This is the time if you have an item or something of interest that is not already on the agenda.
I have some.
Yes, please identify yourself.
Joe
If you
Percy,
could
Essex.
come up here, just if you want to sit over there or stand, either is fine.
Okay, I have some process questions on the women's facility.
Could you
But
say
it
your
can,
name, please?
Joe Percy, Essex,
Thank you.
but they could wait until after the public works. I just wanted to, I can either do them now or.
I think they'd be a better fit for the agenda item.
Okay.
But we will absolutely call on you, don't worry.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, yes, sir. Again, identify yourself, please.
Yeah, my name is David Scopin, and I just wanted to make certain that I'm correct in assuming that one of the functions of this commission is to deal with regulations that may need strengthening, maybe add new regulations into the future in view of what we're experiencing with the Amazon folks who would like to have a slice of the pie here in Essex town of Essex. And a lot of the citizens are not real happy with that, but they probably are not going to be covered. Their needs are probably not going to be covered currently with the existing regulations. So it is my hope that you all will take very seriously that task that you have before you. And it's a big task, and I hope you work real hard on it. And when you do and come up with good results, I'll be the first to congratulate you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Robert Willanset, Town of Essex. This kind of has to do with Amazon also, but I noticed in the town plan on page 16, they talked about this item 6.2 to reduce erosion from existing road and development sources in Alderbrook watershed between Route 15 and 117. And I don't know if you guys are really planning on taking that into consideration with this future development that's going to be happening there. We seem to be putting big parking lots and things like that in there. And when you go to the planning commission, they're just looking at this. They're not looking at the whole thing. And it just seems to be an issue with that. And then also I'd like to know how the definition of this 60/40 in that, what do they call it, Resource Preservation District?
RPDI, yeah.
Is it a 60% of the lot can be developed, or is it the whole area that they show on the map with that certain color? They can only put 60% building on that. That's kind of a question I have on this definitions of the usage. And then, so that's that. And then also in there, because it does deal with traffic, and I don't know how serious it is, but there is on the town plan, chapter 1, they talked about, there's action 3.1. It's the design and construction of the Sand Hill Route 15 intersection. And they gave a time frame as of medium term or term. And I was wondering, because of this and the more traffic that's gonna be there, is that gonna be a focus to try to get that done as quick as we can? Because if this thing does happen, we're gonna have minion vans
Mhm.
trying to get the shortest route as they can, and I see that as a route to get up to Franklin County at 128 and all that stuff. So the town plan does have that in there, but I'm just wondering where that all fits in.
Yeah, so some of those are more properly DRB or AOT questions.
Well,
But what I can tell you about specifically RPDI stuff is that is agenda item C, talking about the buffers in the RPDI. At which point this evening, at which point we'll also be talking about how that pertains to the 60-40 split and just the RPDI in general.
okay,
But as to reviewing development proper, that's not the scope of,
that's correct.
just to
We're
make sure.
Looking at this.
just to make sure.
But the whole plan, it seems as though things are just getting piecemealed, and then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, what do we do? You know, and they're having the same thing down in Tennessee happening. There's a big computing center going on, and then next thing you know, there's not enough power there. So they're hauling in all these gas-powered turbine generators to power this, and now they have smog. So, it's just, everything creeps up on us, and being a planning commission and the plan, what's the total plan for this? Instead of just having piecemeal going in, I think it would satisfy a lot of the folks in town that, hey, there's gotta be some sort of, that we are looking at this stuff and there is a plan for it. Because right now, I know I can't say, there's one road in, one road out. So is there a plan for more in there? And someone's gotta know something. So, and then with the road, I always get the excuse, that's a state road. So, it's almost like I have to go to Montpelier to figure this out. But it does say in our town plan that there's an action item in there. So that's what
Any further public to be heard? All right, Commissioner Carroll.
Good evening, commissioners.
Could you identify yourself?
My name is Ian Carroll. I am a resident of the town of Essex. And I thought, being in front of the planning commission this evening, it would be ideal time to talk about a community event that is coming up in exactly 1 month from today. The 3rd annual Big Beautiful Life Run, Walk and Roll is going to happen at the town of Essex, the Essex Middle School area. It is a 5K and a 1.2K, both run and a walk, and the 1.2K also will accommodate a roll. So those that are in wheelchairs, those that need a flat surface are eligible to do the 1.2K. Those that are in wheelchairs or would like to walk or even run maybe a softer course than the legit course that we've set up on the 5K, which includes what we fondly call the Gulch, which is a very steep decline and long incline. We have a softer version of that that's also called the non-gulch path, which is also excellent to walk, run, or roll. And we also feature, and this may be pertinent to some of our younger participants here, a Touch a Truck event, which includes first responders from around Chittenden County, where families and kids get to not only touch the truck, but also interact with our first responders, as well as this year they're going to set up a fire hose that kids can use to shoot targets. Yes, and Palmer Maple is expected to be there as well. So I have some flyers that I brought here as well. The Big Beautiful Life is a nonprofit my wife and I started that helps to support families and children that are in medical crisis, chronic medical care. We had a long stretch in hospitals with our daughter and learned that it's important to have some supports there that make life a little bit more fun and a little bit more interesting, but also our nonprofit supports the families in that if they've been in the hospital, admitted for 30 days, they get a $100 gift card from our program. If they've been admitted for 60 days, we pay a utility bill. And if they've been admitted for 90 days, then we'll pay a mortgage or rent. So that's what, so the event that we host on Sunday, June 8th at 10 a.m. at Essex Middle School is our sole fundraiser to help us support those programs.
That was June 8th, you said?
June 8th, Sunday, June 8th at 10 a.m. Registration begins at 8:45. The cards here have a QR code. You can go to bigbeautifullife.org, or you can search Run Vermont, or excuse me, you can search Run Sign Up under Addie's Race, and it'll come right up for you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn.
Any further public to be heard? Again, these are items that are not already on the agenda. Going once, going twice. So, moving on to our business items, our first one under 5A, if you have the agenda in front of you, is review comments from Public Works on the Women's Correctional Facility, specifically town services impact. Before we get into this, I do want to remind everyone that we are still, as a commission, in the fact-finding phase. No action will be taken this evening. This is a fact-finding and input phase, just to remind you of that very important thing. And of course, your comments are welcome in that regard. So, staff, what do we have?
All right, realize I didn't pull this memo up. So if you remember back at a prior planning commission meeting, you gathered a bunch of questions that you had, and it was questions that the public also had, questions that had been asked before that hadn't been answered yet, and new questions, variations of questions, and then divided it up further to at a following meeting to figure out who would be best to answer the question. So there was a list of questions for our Public Works Department to answer regarding the women's correctional facility potential impact on infrastructure. So looking at things like traffic and water and sewer, any other things that they might see. So they've provided back some comments, and in time for this meeting, which is great of them. So what I can do is pull them up. The hope tonight would be just to review their questions, and then I guess figure out if the questions that you have for them are answered or are not answered, or if you have any further questions for them. That makes sense.
It does.
Make that a little
You
bigger.
might want to zoom in just a little bit.
Funny thing with Zoom, there's so many like little menu things up on my screen. None of them are showing. So that's okay, so the first question that you had for them, were there any specific carrots that the town could or would get from the state if the women's correctional facility were located here? And so you talked about some ideas for that, and some of it I think was based a little bit on seeing what Virgins was doing in a similar situation. So specifically, really for Public Works, it was things about maybe road infrastructure, wastewater treatment facility capacity, and then specifically to Public Works, was there anything else that you would be interested in getting, or what do you think about those options? So they have a list of things here. So they broke it down for the first part here, specific to the River Road parcel, and then followed by the Colchester Road parcel. And so, they are similar in that they're looking at bike paths. The River Road one is looking at possibly shared costs for North Williston Road Bridge project, which I don't know a whole lot about what that project is, but I think it's I think my understanding is the idea is to elevate the road somewhat, so it's, doesn't flood as often. I know there's also a project for that, the intersection there, that I don't know where the status of that is, so I don't know if that's part of that project, it could be bundled together as one project. They're mentioning upgrading the intersection of, River Road and Sand Hill Road, and I don't know what, that really would entail. We already have a light there, but there's some other improvements that could be made. And then, to upgrade a state-owned outfall at Sand Hill Road.
What's
And
the outfall?
I'm thinking that's a stormwater detention or retention system. So then the Colchester Road, we also have the bike path idea. And then Landfill Lane is a class 3 road, or updated, it's a class 4 road, or a private road, I guess. And then, but upgrading it to a class 3 road. And then general, I would say this would mean for both projects, improvements to the wastewater treatment facility, they increase capacity. And then infrastructure investment, so that might be just money, it sounds like, that could be used in general for infrastructure upgrades. And then they do note that these are specific to public works. Other town staff, including town manager, select board, might have additional ideas.
And just to be clear, these are things that Public Works said they would like
Yes.
to get in the condition of this happening.
And I would say, this is their first pass at it too. If we, down the road have some more thoughts, I'm sure they'd be up for other considerations. And then secondly, you asked the question about the demand for water and wastewater for both sites. And specifically, we noted that the River Road site needs an extra allocation. Well, both of them need an extra allocation. But the Colchester Road site is outside of the sewer core, so it would need to change the sewer core map. And so feedback about the impact of on the sewer core, or on the sewer and capacity. So they did a little bit of math here. So noting that the River Road site is assigned 7.2 EUs, which is equivalent units, right, Sharon, is what that stands for. So that's an equivalent to 1.440 gallons per day of capacity. So that it's already been assigned that on our sewer core map. But what the facility is going to need is 98.75 EUs. So it's quite a bit more than what has been assigned. So, and then noting that the other site on Colchester Road has no capacity assigned, is outside of the sewer core. So it has the additional requirement to upgrade that sewer core boundary, which would entail I think a pretty significant planning process. Trying to figure out, I think we've talked about this before, but do you just update this for the state, or is it, really, I think you need to look at the boundaries across town. Our sewer core boundaries have been the same for a long time, and that's been very purposeful in order to really contain growth in a certain area. So expanding the sewer core is really is a bigger picture for really development in Essex.
And that would be done by the select board.
The planning process would probably start with the planning commission. But yes, any sort of sewer core changes would require a change to the sewer ordinance, as well as the map, and that would be a select board decision. As well as granting any additional capacity. So just that River Road parcel itself would need the select board to approve that.
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
If we ended up if the state decided to move forward and we granted permission to go forward with the Colchester Road piece, and we asked the state to upgrade the sewer core there, they could potentially upgrade it specifically for the prison site only, correct? And and the second part of that question is if the sewer core gets adjusted, then, does that open the door for other developers to say, well, you did it for the state, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why it needs to be a bigger planning project and looking at the boundaries in general. There have been other property owners that have asked for a change to the sewer core in the past, and so to ignore those requests doesn't seem like smart planning either.
Right.
You know, from my understanding, the state would not have authority over the select board to make us change the sewer core.
But they could pay for it.
They could pay for it, yeah, that gets back to one of the carrots that
Right.
could be a possibility, so paying for more capacity at the wastewater treatment plant.
Yep.
Yeah. Which is also a complicated thing because it's shared between Williston and Essex, although it's Essex Junction and us. It is actually run by Essex Junction, but it's a
Right.
tri-town
Yeah.
agreement, and so.
Right, right.
That's very complicated.
Could you potentially pull up a map of the sewer core?
Sure.
And put that on Zoom just so everyone knows where the two sites are in relation to it?
Sure.
Can I ask a weird question too, Catherine?
Yeah.
What is the amount that triggers the select board to have to approve an increase in allocation? Do you know that off the top of your head? Clearly, this is more than that, but I'm just wondering. what that is.
Yeah,
How
Sharon,
much
do you
more?
recall? I think there's increments, like the town manager can approve at one level, and then above that is the select board.
And I don't know, yeah,
This is, yeah.
and before they even give more, as Catherine just stated, they want to expand the sewer core, so.
For the Colchester Road.
To the Colchester Road one. Mhm. And I also reinforce what she said, that we've had people on the books, Josh, I think you've been here. Off the top of my head, Al Senecal has been trying forever up at his mini golf to have it cross the road.
Have across 289, yeah.
And there's a couple others, but his jumps in my mind first.
But Al wasn't necessarily gonna pay for it.
No,
Yeah, he was
No.
asking for that to be adjusted by the town.
right, but again, to reinforce Catherine, it's gotta be, the select board will need to look at
Agreed.
paid
Yeah.
or not paid.
Okay, I feel like this is a little hard to see, but it's the red lines here is this sewer core boundaries.
Here, I've got an okay map here, I can email that to you. I'm trying that one.
And I can turn off some layers here that might help.
No, but part of having the sewer port cross would be.
Does that one work on yours? I just found it.
So I just was making sure I had my email open to get something from you.
There we
Okay, yeah, that is.
go. It gives an idea of the parcels too.
Yeah. So if you could see the cursor down here, it's maybe hard to see, but that is the River Road site.
Fast.
And then the one,
Champlain,
let's see,
Champlain Park, no,
No.
Maple Fields.
the other one.
That's,
And while Catherine's doing that, I will note that the select board has already, prior to this project, said it's time for them to look at the sewer core map in general anyhow.
Mhm. So
Okay, where
I
are we?
think, oh, I'm having a harder time. I wish I had a mouse with me. So I think it's this parcel. Here.
Right, that's 289 coming in,
Yeah.
a big sort of like river looking thing.
Right. So it is adjacent to the sewer core, so that the yellow there is sewer core.
Okay, so that's Old Colchester
Colchester.
Colchester
Colchester
Road.
Road,
Yeah.
yeah.
Through here.
Road. And where exactly is the property on 117?
When you're coming off North Williston Road
Yeah,
onto River, take a left, the former bushy barn, the big red barn that everybody bet $1 on for years, that when it's gonna fall down all on its own. Take your, right after where that location was, your first right, it's a pretty steep driveway, you can't see. But it's posted, I think, and you go up high and there's 2 lots. The state will own the one to the left and the one to the right is owned by somebody else and they're operating up there already. Like a
Yeah, so I
contractor.
pointed that out before, but it's pretty small. So it's this parcel.
Yep.
This is River Road, this is North Williston.
where are we?
Uh,
Oh, okay, now I see the arrow.
All right. Is that good? Good for an
Yeah,
orientation?
yep. Thank you.
So there was a little bit more information about the sewer question. They talk a little bit about where the water would connect to for River Road. So it would come from Chemo Drive. And the Saxon Hill area in Colchester Road, again, that's what we were really talking about. But the water itself could connect on Garden Side Lane, which is adjacent. So for traffic, they've provided some preliminary traffic numbers. The question is, what do you think about their traffic numbers and access to the sites? So they're essentially saying that a full traffic study will need to be done. River Road and Colchester Road are both state-owned sites, and so the ultimate decisions about traffic impacts would be a state decision, although really the Colchester Road access sort of leads to some interesting questions. The state is suggesting maybe they could access off of Susie Wilson Road bypass, and there was a flat no from Public Works on that. I don't think we're allowed to. I think it's either written in documents somewhere or it's a state requirement that there will be no additional curb cuts on that road. And any sort of access on Colchester Road directly would be through the state. If it's landfill lane that is owned by the town, the top of the road access would be most preferred. Midway up, there's concerns just with site distances, and that road gets pretty busy, I think, on the weekends too, which might not be as busy on the weekday when the correctional facility would be busier.
No, I see the River Road is more advantageous. Maybe we're gonna go that route at all.
Can't hear you.
No, just all the way around the River Road location looks to me like a better place.
Seems to be the conclusion Public Works came to.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
that was
if you
there at the end.
jump down, yeah, so that's really I think the last question there. So essentially, the Colchester Road not being in the sewer core is a big issue, huge.
The only question is whether in the future, if we have one facility in one side of the town, if the state comes back and says, well, we own property on the other side of town, and let's have two facilities here.
Well, if they change, they're different zoning districts.
Right.
So they'd have to go start back with the planning commission to see if you're willing to amend your regulations to add that use in that zoning district. So not to say it couldn't happen, but it would have to go through a process.
Yeah, and that would all depend on, you know, if the planning commission decided to go forward with this, what kind of change you're proposing. So initially, when the state came in, they asked essentially to allow it anywhere, the use anywhere in town. Then they amended it, saying that they were really just looking for the industrial district and the R2 district.
And what,
The R2 district, so the R2 district is the zoning district that's on Colchester Road.
We could specify just in a certain part of town, right?
You already have it that way, so it would be. So any questions or clarifications for the public works comments? Just
Or in general?
general.
I mean, one thing I'll say is I watch select board meetings sometimes, and I definitely hear people concerned about maintaining sidewalks, and I wonder if that's accurate to add to the list. Within the public works wheelhouse. Yeah. Especially if we're gonna lose bus routes, maybe sidewalks seem very important.
I have a naive question. I'm not having been involved in this side of things as long as some of you. Understanding that both sites are state-owned and that they originally were acquired for the connector that was killed as an idea. 289, but the connector from Williston to Essex and then eventually to the north end of Burlington, which was always the big plan. The state bills on either one of those locations, both of these parcels were part of that, correct? So they're really pretty much would 100% eliminate the chance of the connector ever being accomplished.
So the Colchester Road one, that is the case. The one that's on River Road was purchased during construction that was happening on River Road. So it's not the site of not the right of way for the CERC.
Okay.
another good reason for putting it there.
Yeah. Having traveled Champlain Parkway the past couple of days, it was nice to be able to avoid a lot of Shelburne Road traffic, so.
Further thoughts from commissioners before I see what the public has to say? Hello, public, what do you have to say? And even if you've spoken before, just identify yourself again, please.
Sure.
Hello. I am Joe Percy of Essex, and I just have a few just process questions. And one is that, am I correct to understand that you're under no time constraint to put this to not vote, but to
Take some action.
yeah, take action or put it to a public hearing?
I mean, my understanding has always been this is our process.
Yeah, okay, so there's no time constraint.
There's no ticking clock. It's
No ticking clock, okay. And then, like I understood that from earlier meetings that we were waiting to hear from the state. Have we had any correspondence or anything back from the state?
I provided them the questions that the planning commission came up with. They are still working on the questions. So we had talked about maybe trying to have them in maybe this summer to answer the questions, maybe in July.
But there's been no, you're not in any contract or anything at this point with the state?
No.
No. There's no. Okay. So, okay, but yeah, then, so you do intend to have the state to have the, both, both departments of the state back in, both corrections and building and general services.
Yes,
That would be.
ideally, yes.
Yeah, eventually.
Again, I got a lot of questions.
And, yeah, and then by, I guess, just a final comment, and I guess, it was Georgia that mentioned the sidewalks. Too, it seems that if they're gonna build pathways, especially on the River Road site, that people have been asking for sidewalks off of Sand Hill. That, it seems like that would be, and I guess it asks the question, or it opens the question, like, when are the residents going to come forward, be able to come forward with their wishes?
Vis-a-vis the sort of carrots that we were talking about with Public Works.
Yeah, yeah, and at this point, these are just perceived benefits, you know? But I guess it's, I'll leave it, I don't expect an answer, you know, from that, but I guess it's something to think about at some point. We would like, you know, there's definitely carrots that the residents would like to.
I mean, you're certainly welcome to do exactly what you're doing now, or as a group from a particular area that you feel will be affected, say, given the ongoing process, given that there are questions out to the state,
Yeah.
here's what our area sees as an appropriate change. That's perfectly appropriate to do at any time.
And for example, I would suggest like the tree farm. I know there was like, I guess, the buildings down there that needed improvements. You know, extended, you know, could be extended to the tree farm. And then, you know, clearly the sidewalks at Sand Hill. Then in fact, the town is looking to repair a salt shed. So those are other, you know, so there's some of my considerations.
Yeah, I'd also note that we receive a lot of email correspondence from residents too.
Yeah.
That goes in our file that we read, so
Yeah, okay,
it's a perfectly appropriate thing to do, to submit email correspondence.
all right, thank you.
So we have one hand up online, Cheryl.
Cheryl VE, you are recognized.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Van Epps. I have 3 comments, if you'll allow me. First of all, the bike path. I'm a resident who lives along 117. I would recommend a bike path that is similar to the one that's on 2A, that is far enough away from 2A, as you travel on the right, traveling south on 2A, the right side where there is a strip of grass and then the paved bike path. So it's far enough away from the road. I am a 50-something-year-old woman, and I tried bicycling just one time from just west of 289 to Paul Maz's because I was not able to drive at that time. I was scared for my life. So the cars are really whipping. It's dangerous. So if that bike path is going to happen, I recommend something that's far enough away from the trucks and the traffic to make folks feel safe. Also, I just Googled the current women's correctional facilities in South Burlington, and I asked, when are visitation hours? And it's apparently on the weekends only. So I don't know what the schedule is going to be for the new facilities, but currently there's no bus route going through that area on 117 doing the loop on weekends. So I want you folks to be aware of that. If their visitors are going to need transportation, they're going to need a bus. I would recommend coordinating that or working on that because there'll be It's it's a transportation island out here. I'm currently without a car while my son has the car during his workday, and I feel it, so I just want to pass that on. My last point is, we should definitely press the state for human resources if we're going to push through this facilities, because we are short on social workers, nurses, mental health professionals. I know myself, somebody who went through the mental health system, they're short on trauma-informed, trained professionals. So I would hope the state would budget for that if they're going to claim this facilities is trauma-informed in the care that it provides. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you lower your hand, please?
Thank you. Yes. And again, state your name, please.
Sure. My name is Wendy James, Essex resident. The issue I wanted to bring up in regards to planning is the amount of light that comes off of a 24/7 correctional facility. I also have a camp up in St. Albans. I am a few miles from that facility. The lights don't ever go off. There's a significant amount of light pollution. I don't know if Public Works looked at that or whether that's something that's just the entry road and the facility and who's paying that light bill. I would assume it's the state, but the impact is fairly significant, both environmentally and sort of around the facility. I also have the ability to see Dannemora from where I am in St. Albans, which is a good 50 miles away, and you never not see it. So the impact of the light to both natural resources as well as humans needs to be thought of. And I don't think anybody's brought up the fact that this thing is going to glow very significantly, you can see from space.
Thank you. Yes.
My name's Shaughnessy, I'm a resident of Essex, and I live right on Gardenside Lane, and she brought up a good point about the lights. That would be directly in my backyard, they're talking this prison, so I'm wondering, when you do, I don't know if you have any say on this or anything, but is a prison gonna have just like wire fences, or they're gonna have a big, like you spoke about Dannemora too, it's a big cement wall, whatever, but it's gonna be in my backyard, I mean, literally, if it's that bright, thank you for bringing that up, I appreciate that, I mean, are you even thinking about there's 5 houses on Gardenside Lane, you know, I don't know, I'm not even familiar with Riverside Road, so I feel for them too, whatever's happening over there, but, I mean, this is like I said, I can walk, I could throw almost a baseball to where my line is, to where they're gonna put this prison, so, I mean, that's how close it is to my house, I'm just wondering, do you have any say on what this is gonna look like, or how it's gonna affect these 5 houses on Gardenside Lane, or you just gonna put that aside and not think about, hey, the state's gonna take care of that, I'm just wondering, I have no idea, you know, what that would entail if, you know, I know they show a pretty little prison for these ladies that they want, you know, some kind of Scandinavian thing, but again, it could be a big bright thing, and I know it doesn't affect everybody in Essex, but it does affect people that live on that road, and, you know, I just hope you take that into consideration when you make your decision. I mean, like I said, the lights would be a nightmare, you know, my mother-in-law lives right there, right down there. Like I said, it's just sad. Thank you. Anyway, I
Thank you.
appreciate your help.
Thank you.
The state's doing the design, is my understanding.
Right, they would be offering a design for a facility. If were to get to the point where a district were created, they would be the ones who they would then be submitting a design, which would then come before the DRB, which would then be based on whatever regulations we had drawn up for the district. That's my understanding, be the same as any other development that gets submitted to the DRB now. We have to follow the rules specific to that district. And we would be the ones creating the rules for that district as part of our zoning process. So thank you for your comments, is the short answer.
Thank you.
And currently there are regulations in place for lighting.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. just wonder if we would be aware though, that we're gonna be aware, people on that garden side lane, are we gonna be known? Or we have to come to all these meetings just to find out how that might happen.
We post online the plans
Right, okay.
as well, so there'll be a lighting plan in the staff report, which will talk specifically about lighting.
Okay, good, thank you.
But we encourage you to still come to your,
Oh, yeah,
meeting, if
no,
not
definitely.
here via Zoom.
No, that's fine, I will, thank you.
And you can also sign up on our website to get notifications of agendas being posted. So you could see when the planning commission agenda is coming up and if it has the correctional facility discussion on it, just so you can be aware.
Okay.
Same with the DRB. If this does get to that point, you can also get notified about that. And
Thank you.
Yes,
My name is Sue Getty. I'm a resident of Essex. I just want a clarifying question. My understanding was that the town planning did not have a correctional facility, jail, whatever you want to call it, in it. So why were we talking about changing the town planning for carrots?
so as it is currently, there is an area in town that is zoned for a facility. And that's sort of right off Route 15 across from the fort. And the state has come to us with a request asking us to rezone certain parcels so that facilities, women's correctional facility would be allowed there. And so where it is right now is we as a planning commission are doing fact finding to determine whether we as a planning commission want to make that zoning change.
And this is going to land only on the planning facility and not on the residents of Essex and Essex Town? Will this go to a vote? Can the public have an actual say in whether we want this to happen and not just for carrots and for some conveniences in the name of, people's freedom and dignity?
So the usual process is it would go to the planning commission, we would have public hearings. Again, this is if we choose to
If you
accept the
choose.
state's recommendations or requests rather, we would have public hearings on it. Assuming, again, assuming it's voted up, it would then go to the select board because changes could potentially need to be made in ordinances and such. And then there'd be the zoning change. And then with the zoning change, then any potential development would come to the DRB. That said, we looked at this last time and I can't remember where it is in the bylaws, but there is an option for residents of the town to disagree with a particular decision that, I forget which stage, and you can correct me, but to say via petition, we do not like that this happened, we would like to overrule the movement of either the PC or the select board. And we are nowhere near that right now, obviously, we're just hearing recommendations and fact find, but that process does exist.
right,
So there is a potential where you could say, and again, fill me in which point in the process, but there is a point where the public can say, with a certain percentage of signatures, we'd like to weigh in on this. That is possible.
Okay, what, do you know what that percentage is? Does it change for different things or is it?
No,
just
it's
like
a set percentage in the bylaws, and I don't have that memorized in front of me. Five sounds right, but I don't
Yeah,
want
I
to
think
commit
that
to
sounds
five if it's a single digit number.
Okay,
And that would be if the select board were to
once
approve
you
it.
make a
So,
decision.
yeah, so the
Right.
planning commission is really just recommending a zoning change. The select board is the one who would actually approve it. So it would be after select board approval, within a certain time frame. I think it's 25 days after.
Okay.
If there's no petition at that time, during that time frame, or enough votes, I guess, or enough signatures aren't gathered, then it would become law.
There are a lot of steps.
Right, you'd be
Right, sounds like,
at the very least 2 steps from now, which would again assume approvals from the PC and the select board.
what do 2 steps might look like in a time frame? Who knows?
At this point, your guess is as good as mine. You've heard what we have heard from the state so far, and our moving forward, as you probably inferred, is contingent on getting some answers.
Okay.
So you heard that we are hopeful we'll hear from them this summer.
Okay.
That's all I can give you right now. The ball in that sense is in their court.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And the
Yes,
state was clear, it's an important step because the state was clear when they were in during the summer that they want to hear from the community. They don't want to be in a community that doesn't fit, where they don't feel welcome.
Right.
So it is an important step.
Further public comment on this particular item. I'm gonna try to look up that. thing. Oh, yes, please.
Good evening, Irene Renner,
Good evening.
resident of Essex. I guess we're not on a ticking clock unless you happen to live in the Chittenden Regional Facility and are dealing with a bug infested, mold infested, over the holidays, a sewage infested environment. I would argue on behalf of the women there whom I have met, I visited the facility, I've visited that facility several times. There is a clock that's ticking. Those women need to escape from that place that is unhealthy, in fact, a sick building. We've waited about 9 months already. We're waiting for the state to answer a lot of questions that I think are premature for where we are in this process. This board has been asked to make a zoning change. That has to do with looking at a map and seeing if somehow we can bring ourselves to change the zoning on these parcels such the state can continue with steps 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, up to 100 perhaps, before this is built in the next 10 or so years. I feel like time's a wasting. Lives are being wasted. These people are away from their families. These people are not able to get the training and the healing environment that they need to turn their lives around. And I believe in second chances. And these women deserve second chances. And a lot of them just can't get the help they need, the programming, the job training they need in the current facility. And that's why for the last umpteen years, so many of us have said a new facility needs to be built. Essex has the honor of being chosen for the top 2 sites out of the 140 that the state closely examined. I feel it's our duty to take this seriously and to do everything we can to make it happen. Not because we want it, but because these women need it. And we do have lighting regulations. Heaven knows I've spent 20 years in this room on various committees, including the select board, talking about things like how do you face the lighting downward so it doesn't disturb the neighbors, and so on and so on and so on. And you folks on this board, if you've been on it for any length of time, as a PC, as a zoning board, understand that there are regulations about that already. But that isn't always public information. So I welcome the chance to have these conversations as a community. There's definitely things that all of us don't know. And only by coming together in a thoughtful process can we tease out people's concerns and maybe alleviate some of those concerns. But the conversation about some of the details that are being discussed right now, I personally believe are more appropriate after the zoning change is made. There are many, many more steps, and there are many more opportunities to have all the different committees and commissions weigh in on this project. I would ask that you quickly approve the zoning for one or both sites so we can move off of step 1 and get into the weeds and talk more about things and make some sound decisions as to whether or not this is right for our community. But by this particular board sitting on this first step for this long, I find it extremely concerning. Part of the Colchester plot is in the M2 district. Last I checked the zoning maps, that has to do with medium residential and covered by sewage treatment. So that to me means just expanding that M2 district in our minds, thinking that 150 women or so in a facility that size on a plot of land that size may indeed fit the M2 definition. I'd like to see some creative thinking in this room about this topic as to how do we take this as an opportunity that I believe it is to make a change that is long overdue. And heaven knows, I wish it had been done 20 years ago and it cost about $10 million instead of now when it's going to cost $100 million and I'm going to have to spend my political capital
getting it done. I wish someone else had taken this on, but they didn't. And so it's up to us now, because it's happening in our lifetimes, to think about the women first, and second and third and fourth and fifth, and keep them at the center of our conversations. The CERC alternatives, we spent a lot of time and money widening that Susie Wilson bypass so that there'd be 2 lanes going over that really narrow bridge onto the CERC, but that's been accomplished. It can process so much more traffic now than it could 10 years ago. So let's not forget all that we've done already to some of these areas that make this project in some ways a no-brainer. And yes, we have turned down some developers like Al Senecal and Bob Marcotte in his day, who wanted to extend the sewer core for profit-making reasons. Rest assured, no one's making a profit off of this. We are asking for a zoning change and perhaps a sewer core extension, not to make anybody money, but to change lives. To me, that's a big difference. And as someone who sat on the select board and was asked repeatedly to change the sewer core, I can recognize the difference, and I hope you do too. This is not a developer, this is the state. And we are a Dillon's rule state, meaning that Essex is a creature of the state. And when the state asks us for a favor, like changing the zoning, I don't think it should take 9 months. I don't think it should take 12 months. I think this should happen a long time ago, but we find ourselves here. So I'll be patient, because I've learned to be patient. In local government, nothing happens quickly, nothing happens the way you expect it will, but sometimes good things can happen. Change is hard, but as was mentioned, the select board will be looking at the sewer core map. So asking them to tweak it and expand it from where it ends on Garden Side out a couple dozen acres, to me, is not a big ask. Maybe it is to you, but to me, it's not a big ask. Again, I've sat on that board. They're pretty reasonable people when you ask them to do things like this. Last I knew, the staff has met with state representatives. Is that not true?
Yes, we have. Yeah.
Okay. My impression from an earlier conversation was that the state is nowhere to be found answering these questions. And to my knowledge, people from the state were in this building just a week ago talking with town officials, but perhaps it wasn't.
They don't have answers to the questions. That was the question that was asked.
Understandably, but it's not that the state has been missing in action, so I don't want anyone to have the misimpression that the state is nowhere to be found. They're working hard on these questions. And as a state taxpayer, I understand that for them to spend hundreds of hours asking questions that might appropriately be asked 6 months from now after the zoning change is approved, I can understand why they're not able perhaps to prioritize those either time-wise or money-wise. And I would hope that we could all be understanding of their constraints, being that we actually sponsor them by paying their salaries. Someone mentioned freedom and dignity. Yeah, I'm all for freedom and dignity. We have to bring those women into a space where they can have more freedom and dignity. As for whether or not people are traveling on weekends and who's coming to visit, whether or not there's a bus, I see a 50% contingency here on page 4 of the packet. I would hope 125 extra trips estimate would cover anyone if they couldn't take a bus to visit their loved one in the facility. Honestly, I had to shake my head. When I look at the demand for water use here, currently the River Road site has 7.2 EUs available. That is 5% of the total average demand. It is 2.7% of the maximum daily hydraulic demand. We're having a public works staff tell us that a site that needs 100% allocation versus 97% allocation on a daily basis is a significant difference. I don't know, maybe I learned the old math, I'm a boomer, but I'm a little gobsmacked that that's making a huge difference. River Road has a very small assigned allocation, and the other side has 0. I would just hope that we keep our wits about us when we look at these numbers and don't fall for this site has some, this site has none. This site has very few EUs, and this site doesn't have any right now. But the EUs are a planning tool. That's all they are. Just like the zoning map is a planning tool. Just like our budgets are moral documents. Yes, budgets are numbers, but they're also a way that we show our priorities and our values. And I think that the way we look at this proposal from the state also shows our values. And the way we allocate our sewer shows our values in what we want to preserve. The sewer core is a way to keep rural areas rural and not so rural areas not so rural. Both of these sites were zoned industrial or M2 in case of Colchester Road. I don't think either of those sites could be expected to be developed without adequate water and sewer. So I would ask that we keep a perspective. As a mentor of mine and a longtime town manager would say, recognize where we are. We've been asked by the state to do them this favor. It is a huge opportunity for Essex, and I really hope we will continue to look at it as a glass half full and not half empty. Thank you.
Thank you. I see we have some hands online. It's the one I see that's named is Lorraine Zalou. You are recognized.
Thank you. It's Lorraine Zaloom. I live in Essex. I do appreciate taking your time on this one because it is a big ask in my view as a resident, because so many other parts of our town plan have not come to fruition yet. And we have a lot of development happening before the infrastructure meets the need. And I know certainly us working on our capital plan, we're trying to better align our capital plan to catch up for a lot of the infrastructure projects that are going on. And one of my frustrations with the state is that I asked questions months ago and they're still not answered. And some of the information that came out was incorrect. So I'm concerned with some of the veracity of the information in terms of the pitch. And my other concern is in terms of state priorities and how we spend our money. It is clear to me that one of our state priorities has not been for the incarcerable population, given the deterioration of the current prison that we're talking about replacing. So I'm very concerned about the state not taking care of their prisons or correctional facilities. Also major concerns about more employment. Lighting is certainly something you can see Dannemora from across the state in terms of where it's placed. And certainly transportation for people who are incarcerated is very important because they often don't have a car to be able to get to see their family. I do believe, I'm not a NIMBY. I don't think a prison is a bad thing per se. I think it needs to be put in the right place. And also I think it needs to be switched. I'd much rather the money go into servicing the people to keep them out of prison instead of imprisoning people. And a lot of that money could go to reduce the population instead of needing to build a whole new facility. I'm very concerned about the deterioration of that current facility in South Burlington, and that we may end up in the same position in this town. So to characterize this as a slow roll, I wouldn't characterize it that way. I think there's a lot of moving parts to this, and I appreciate that you guys take your time. And I would love to see the state again so they can finally get some of those questions answered. Thank you. I did attend, there was a wonderful meeting that the state put together that had a lot of the service providers, and there's clearly a need for the reentry facility. I'm not necessarily sold on the other part, and unfortunately, the bigger part is the prison and not the reentry. I'd rather see the reentry expanded as opposed to the other. But again, I appreciate you guys taking your time on this. It's not a small ask. Thanks.
Thank you. Rachel Lazat, you are recognized. Rachel?
Sorry, yep, sorry. Button malfunction. Rachel Lazat, Town of Essex resident. I just wanted to urge the Planning Commission to take as long as possible. The Planning Commission and other boards in the town are tasked with thinking about the good of the town over individual needs, and I would categorize the state as an individual need at this point. And just because a member of the public wants the zoning change to be acted on before the state answers a vital question seems backwards to me. The town boards are, again, tasked with protecting the town. So, and please, the residents are attending these meetings and they're begging you to do this for the town. So I, again, would urge the Planning Commission to get those answers from the state as detailed as they need to be before making decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Mary Beth Redmond.
Yes, thanks so much for the opportunity to be here. Mary Beth Redmond, I live on Marion Ave in Essex. I appreciate all of this discussion and conversation. You know, a couple of things that I want to push back on, the fact that there continues to be this well-worn mantra of the fact that the state is not answering questions, not responding to, you know, and I was actually quite surprised to hear that they're not coming till the summer, because everything that I've heard from them is that they'd be willing to come to this meeting tonight and respond and be available to residents to talk about concerns and issues. So I know that the Planning Commission has had a strong desire to do their fact finding and information gathering prior to the state coming back. I feel I'm just not sure what's really true here, and wanting and hoping that there's more of a coming together here in conversation, because I know that the state is willing to come and answer concerns and questions about the type of facility they're thinking and all of that. So I respect your process and your time frame. You know, there are a lot of things to consider. I do feel like there's a little bit of a chicken and egg scenario here, where the state is looking for some kind of good faith commitment that a zoning change is possible. I think the town is looking for, you know, knowing upfront what they're going to, you know, what the results are going to be, whether this site or that site is more buildable. I don't think they know any of that until they get a zoning change and then start to dig in and do all of their assessments and all of that. So I know that there's a desire to move things forward here, but it feels to me like there's a little bit of a stalemate happening, and I'm not really sure, you know, I'm not involved in any of the inner conversations that are going on here, but I'm just wanting to kind of underscore a similar sentiment that was expressed earlier, which is that there are literally people's lives on the line here. People are living in a facility that was designed as like a 2 and 3 day facility to hold them. There are women who've been there for 20 years. It's a completely inhumane place. And I feel like as a responsible human, we have the right thing to do is to make a decision and move forward here, so that these women can have a restorative place to heal. The place they're in now. And then I want to speak just quickly to the point about the state not keeping up these facilities. That is really not true. This is a facility that's 50 years old. And like most 50-year-old facilities, the amount of deferred maintenance and upkeep becomes exponential as these buildings go along, just like all of our schools. If you look at the deferred maintenance on all of the school buildings, it's massive right now in the state of Vermont. So it's not that the state hasn't kept up on this facility, it's that it's a 50-year-old facility, and it's been identified as being on a location that is not the best location for it because it's sinking into the ground. So I just want to throw out there that it's not like they've turned their backs and they haven't been putting money in. They put in $3 million over the last year to try to improve and bring things to the next level. The bottom line is that space is not a big enough space to truly rehabilitate people. There is no programming space. Women are literally in their cells practically all day long with a tiny communal space in the middle. So it is, I mean, as bad as it gets if you think about being incarcerated. So I just want to throw in those points. I know that the state, at least everything I've heard, is willing to come to the table and work this through. And I'm just hopeful that there's willingness on both sides and that this conversation can move forward soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you. I'm gonna go to Patty Davis.
Yes, hi, thank you. I would just like to reiterate what Rachel Lizotte was speaking about. It's not that we don't want anything in our backyard and that we don't want to take care of these women. And I agree, I'd love to have these women come out and open hair salons and become and open small businesses in our area. But the flip side of the coin is that as Rachel said, the town's responsibility, all the board's responsibility is to take care of the residents first. Because it is also not fair that a biker who went up Sand Hill had 17 surgeries, he's not able to, and he was put into an institution for a little while because it was so bad. And this is a resident of Essex trying to use a road that we should have sidewalks on first and foremost. And that think of our own residents. This person can't drive, can't even ride his bike. And both areas that you're looking at is adjacent to residential areas. So my view is you take care of your residents first, and then and have that be a negotiation with the state. You have the state answer those questions. What are you going to give us for a carrot? Are you going to put sidewalks all along Sand Hill Road and redo the sidewalk that's been there for 40 years and is crumbling that people trip over? Or are you going to risk having another person have 17 surgeries and have his life ruined because he can't ride his bike or drive ever again? I mean, that is our Essex resident we're talking about. And you want to negotiate, you give us carrots that actually mean something and answer the questions. Answer the questions. The state, what are you going to give us to help our town and our residents in order for us to help you? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheryl, we have your hand up still.
Hi, I just typed in the comments. I wanted to add that we have the director of ICE saying that he wants to hold detainees in our prison system. We have Governor Scott, according to, was it 7 days? Vermont Digger article saying that he will place ICE detainees in our state prisons. So I just wanted to add that. And also, I'm an honorary witness for the Vermont Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I will be listening to testimonies of folks from the public who have been harmed by their systems. I myself have been harmed by our system. I just want to say how deficient we are and how the state is lacking in funding that harmed me as a result. I want to say my values are where we should put our limited state funds should be in providing Vermonters for their needs. I do not see a bigger, brand new building, which is going to probably cost more than upgrading and updating an older facilities. I do not see that investment going into the prison system as being progressive in caring for, providing for the needs of Vermonters like myself. So I just want to say this state is limited in funds, and I really am looking at where you folks are deciding our dollars should go towards until we get more federal dollars coming into the state. I'm going to be watching. Eyes are on you. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm cognizant it is 7:15. We have other items. Are there any last thoughts on agenda item 5A this evening? Yes, identify yourself, please. You can get the last thought.
Yeah, my name is Brian Clifford. I live on 6 Tanglewood Drive. I also really want to see all the women out of the prison in South Burlington. And I guess I'm less patient because I don't want to wait 10 years for that to happen. I agree that it probably won't take that long. And I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I know that smarter people than me are looking at this. It may look very well, it might well look like the reentry facility portion of the project. But I just wonder how many of those smaller facilities can we build across the state, located closer to the communities that these women are coming from, with $100 million in a shorter time span. So that being said, I just want to thank the board for being deliberate about this. Like the community of Essex is not stopping the Department of Corrections from addressing this problem. Department of Corrections is framing this as the only way to solve the problem, and that is not on us to shoulder. So thank you for kind of doing your due diligence and listening to people like, you know, government bodies should do. Thank you.
We bring this back to the table then. Are there any final commissioner thoughts on 5A for now, or shall we move on to 5B? Final thoughts?
I have no more final thoughts on this.
All right, so we move on now to agenda item 5B. We have various working groups afoot, and this is the Steep Slopes Working Group on Regulations and Best Practices. Team Steep Slopes.
Well, I have a presentation worked out
By all
on
means.
steep slopes.
I will.
Thanks. And as Catherine is pulling that up, I will admittedly let the rest of the board know that poor Trevor at the moment is on his own. I from both of the work groups that I had dutifully joined in our last meeting, I realized that because of my earlier comments about the fun run that's coming up, I don't have capacity to help either Trevor or Paula.
Well, Georgia,
yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Because, well, I mean, I'm retired, you know, what am I gonna do with myself?
As I said, I'm happy to come back once the race is over.
So noted. After June 8th, you'll be one of us.
Exactly.
Trevor, if you would.
Sure. Well, looked at the steep slopes, and I'll just go ahead, you know. And so I guess, you know, this came, you know, those of us are also on the DRB, that some cases came up where people wanted to build on greater than 20% slope. And maybe some people came with applications that suggested that 20% was not steep or shouldn't be made into an issue. But if you look into it, there's lots of reasons. It's erosion, stream quality, drainage problems, surface water flow, groundwater flow, and it's known. You can go to many different sources. Those things I just said, I took them from a HUD website where about that is for information about people, I guess, building houses with HUD money. So I went over that, and so the next one would be, can I,
Next page.
yes, please. So, and again, I took this, there's apparently some sort of government agency around Lake George in New York State. But it said an interesting thing in it. Besides, steep slopes require a large footprint of disturbance to create a buildable level area and meet existing grades. And also they mentioned that disturbance of steep slopes results in visual impacts that can change the character of watershed. So again, this is from another source, but you can find many on the internet. Now, the one thing also then we want to look at is that we have this 20% maximum in our zoning. And there is nothing unreasonable about that maximum. And a 20% slope is a steep slope. And there's no question about that. If you look at the literature, you could find maybe thousands of government, other jurisdictions around the country that use the 20%, some places even 15%. So then, well, that's what I said. So then the regulations we have, they're not unusual. Okay, and there's many places have this, and so of course, then you get to what are the solutions, and so you can change the zoning laws, and I didn't include it in this, but I found a later thing that there's places, and I found it was in Westchester County, New York, where if you have steep slopes on, say, 20% of the site, you can't, no more than 10% of that area may be disturbed, and I guess of the total site. So there's these different ordinances out there where if you have a steep site, it limits the area of development that can take place on that site. So it's really interesting, and so I think we should look at something like that. Sorry, I didn't get it into what I sent you, but I'll send it out to everybody. And so I think there's the potential there to change the law zoning and clarify the seriousness of steep slopes.
Do you think it would be appropriate to come back next month with sort of a model regulation of what you're talking about?
Yes.
Something like that, we can hash that one out.
Yes, I've got one. I didn't get it into the one that I sent Catherine, but yeah, I'll be ready.
Yeah, great. So next month we can look at that and then decide whether we want to advance to the next step.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm assuming now the public to be can weigh in on this.
Sure.
David Scopin. Regarding steep slopes, 15% with caution, 20% forget it. what I'm hearing you say is that you're trying to find a way around this. Now,
No.
I've already watched.
No, not at all. That's
That-
not what I'm
That
saying.
wasn't what
Are
you
you
were
gonna,
saying.
you're gonna
That's not
take,
what I was saying.
well, what were you saying?
I'm saying you shouldn't exceed 20%, period.
Well, that's what we have.
Right.
That's what we have.
No,
And I
but what I'm
watched
also saying
a
is.
planning commission 2 or 3 years ago come up with a waiver, and that 20% lasted for 2 or 3 years until the developer
No,
pulled the.
I'm not saying do any sort of a waiver. What I'm saying is there's places where they limit the development even more. Because say a particular parcel is all steep slopes. Or is partially steep slopes. They limit the development even more. By saying that you can't develop on these steep slopes, and that if it's got a certain percentage of the parcel is, say it's 40%, 20% slopes, then automatically the zoning law kicks in and says, well, you can only develop a small area on this parcel. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Yes. So I'm not saying that I don't know. I think you gotta hold the 20% and then maybe even look at things that are even more limiting, because this is a real serious thing. This is causes erosion, all sorts of problems. So, oh no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying 20% is a good maximum, and we really gotta stick with it and not allow variances from it. That's my.
Not granting waivers, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, no waivers. No, it's a serious issue.
Then maybe you can answer a question for me, because going back a number of years, quite a few years, Marcotte came with a proposal to develop a piece of land, put 37 dwellings on it. And he had a lot of 20% slopes, and he was granted a waiver, and that thing went on for about 3 years until he pulled the request. So I'm wondering what happened there, because as an observer, I looked at that and I thought 7 people voted to go ahead with that project. 7 all voted for going ahead with that project, and clearly 20% slopes were not going away.
Well,
So that did not happen, so.
What did not happen?
The last approval that Brian Marcotte had was in, what, Sharon, like 2005 or something like that? Pinewood H, and that was before the steep slope regulation was in effect. So the recent application that Brian Marcotte has, he has come back and changed it multiple times, trying to reduce the impact of the slope, but it does not have any approvals from the DRB at this point. He needs a final plan approval, and he hasn't even submitted preliminary.
Before 2025 rolled around, he had a project in that must have started in 2022.
He doesn't have any approvals from that yet.
He never got an approval. He withdrew his application. But what I'm saying is, for 2 or 3 years, that kept moving forward, and he kept trying to figure out how to sideline why was the planning commission unwilling to shut that down and let that poor man? That's what I'm wondering.
It's not approved.
If there's no approvals.
Can you vote? If someone comes to you with something that you know will never be approved, can you vote it down? Or do you have to let him spend 2 or 3 years trying to get around the 20% slope?
What he wants to do with his time is his business, but we can deny an approval, which is well, rather the DRB, it used to be the PC as well, but we can say, this isn't gonna fly, and he can spend 2 to 3 years coming back and trying different things, but
Yeah, we have no
nothing,
control over
yeah,
that.
his life is his life. But we haven't approved anything.
So-
The DRB hasn't approved anything.
Fine. Now, so clarify for me, why was there a vote that was 7-0? What was that all about?
To continue.
Was it, this is the DRB you're talking about?
No, this is the planning commission from probably 2022.
Well,
So
that was combined.
He was, you're right, this is his project has lingered on for a long time. He has only ever been granted sketch plan approval, which at the sketch plan level, there's not a lot of detail, not a lot of information was provided. The bottom line statement from the planning commission at the time was that it looks like you're probably impacting steep slopes. If you can figure out how to develop that you're not impacting the steep slopes, then this could work. If you can't, this is not gonna work. So that is how it works. So back in the early stages, he was like, oh yeah, that's not gonna work. So he kept reducing the number of units, trying to get it to work. So it kept coming back to the planning commission for sketch plan approval. So it is not.
And what the
any other
planning
approvals.
commission is working on now, as Trevor just announced, they're beginning to look at the regs, and they're likely gonna maybe make some changes to the 20% slope, such as the percentage of what you can develop within a certain parcel, which would limit it as well. So, and another thing they might be able to consider is, and it might even go into the waiver clause, putting that particular comment that Trevor made about the limiting factor of it in the waiver clause. So it wouldn't be a blanket waiver, if enforced that they could only build a certain amount of area, 20% slope.
Or maybe no waiver
Or
at
maybe-
all.
or
I mean, I
maybe no
think
waiver at all.
It's not been determined, I think.
Right.
what the
Well, I
language
would
be.
I would love to see less waivers granted for sure, and I think people who have been watching this a lot longer than I would also really appreciate if less waivers
I think that's
were granted.
the point of our working group was trying to make the regulations such that.
I'm sorry, I can't.
The point of our two working groups were trying to make the regulations more specific, so there would be less waivers. I think we identified 2 areas where there was a lot of people requesting waivers, and we're trying to make that not happen as much. So that's kind of the goal of what we're working with.
Basically, your government is at
Let
work.
me see if I can put it in my own words and you agree or disagree. What you're saying is that in 2022, you voted 7-0, but it had nothing to do with granting a waiver. It had nothing to do with encouraging them to go ahead. And he simply kept coming back.
Because the regulations have a generalized waiver, and they're either gonna get rid of the waiver, or they're gonna amend it so that the 20% slopes can only maybe have a portion of waiver. And that's why we're here tonight, and that's why they have working groups. They're nowhere near making the decision yet, but proposed zoning regs in the future will show changes to the 20% slope currently.
So to clarify that particular thing, there are 3 tiers with a large project. There are sort of 3 tiers that the developer will go through. The first one is called sketch, the second one is called preliminary, and the third one appropriately is called final. And at sketch, a developer will come in with, as the name implies, a sketch of what they want to do. And they'll say, here conceptually is what I'm trying to do. Here's basically what I see as the lay of the land. And we make it very clear, or rather again, the DRB now, but the former PC, makes it very clear that an approval at sketch is in no way an approval of any project. It merely is a conceptual acknowledgement of, okay, we think there is enough here that if you resolve the problems, we could grant you a preliminary approval. And so the developer will then decide, based on the feedback, the PC/DRB, whichever time period we're talking about, based on that feedback, the developer will say, okay, these problems that they've identified are too large, I'm gonna stop there. Or maybe they will go on to preliminary with an attempt to reconcile what we said and their own plan for a parcel. So in this case, Brian Marcotte received a 7-0 vote that was, we see enough here that conceptually this could work if you deal with the following list. And so at this time, there is no final approval of any project. It merely said, the PC at the time merely said, conceptually this could work, we'd like to hear more.
No waiver at that point.
Right.
No-
At
no-
the
no
prelim,
waiver.
at sketch, it's just this idea looks like it's worth following.
Gotcha. So you make a determination by looking at it, that there might be a possibility. But you don't, do you have did he come in with could tell you how much alteration in the landscape he would have to do to make this thing actually?
They don't get to do.
Not a-
that.
yeah.
Yeah, it's sketch. I don't believe so.
Gotcha.
In this particular instance, I believe it was just,
But-
I don't recall exactly, but I'm certain we brought this issue up.
Right.
And that's why it's in the limbo between sketch and preliminary still.
Gotcha. And you all had walked the land before, when someone comes with you with a sketch, you walk the land and you're dealing with the developer and the engineer, and they're at least familiarizing you with what they're up against to try to.
But specifically in the case of Pinewood,
Yeah.
actually, my older son came on for that one.
I'm sorry.
I said specifically in the case of Pinewood, yes, my older son, my younger son, my older son, who was about this size, to give you an idea of how long ago it was, came on that walk, and we all as a PC walked the property. We saw the slopes for ourselves, and that was again, the limbo between sketch and preliminary. So to make absolutely clear, nothing has been approved for a final development. It's up to
Oh, no,
his-
I understand
Okay,
that.
this
Thank
is
you.
up to
Thank you
his,
for the
up to his judgment to whether he wants to take what we said and go to preliminary or start again with perhaps a new sketch.
Right. Okay, well, thank you very much. You definitely clarified that.
Thank you. Oh, I see that we've been keeping Lorraine waiting for a while. Sorry about that. Lorraine Zalou.
I think Cheryl's hand was up ahead of mine, Josh.
Okay, Cheryl.
Hi, yes, I'm also a Pinewood Manor resident. So David is one of my neighbors. I wanted to point out that when we look at the Essex Town Plan 2024, we see the slope map. And then when we look at the map for planned growth area, there are areas where it appears to be potential growth area where there's incredibly sloped areas, in fact. So I brought that up. Last night was the CCRPC meeting, and I brought that up, and I asked them to please add to the map. Well, they came upon this idea, like a disclaimer that just because it's indicated as potential growth or future growth area, that they need to see it for themselves, or there may be like natural resources or sloped areas which will prohibit development. So it's like these maps are misrepresenting what is actually there. That's my point. And if you go through the 2024 town plan, you'll see that, especially in my area. I'm going to agree with David on most of his points. Let's see. If you deal with the following, but I would recommend that whoever is looking at slopes for future regulations and modifying the regulations, I would recommend you look at the current situation, which has been there for decades now and is deteriorating. So to not only tour the area where proposed development is, but look at past, what has happened in the past, because I'm in Pinewood in an older area they built my home in 1968, and Creek Road is terrible. My neighbor was flooding in their basement because he had, I'm guessing, he leveled out the topsoil, the sands, and exposed the clay. So their basement was flooding. I'm clear, I am pure sand. So this is what happens when you wipe out the peaks and level it out. Somebody gets screwed. And you folks need to know that it's not pleasant. I saw 3 different homeowners go through sump pumps, the shooting it, what do you call it, the dry wells. And the engineer, I spoke to them, I said, what is happening? Because my basement's fine. And they told me the ground level, the ground, what is it, the water table level was too high at that property. And it was across the street, and they're on the same level visually as I am. So these things need to be understood, that it's a mistake to build in some of these areas. So I would recommend your commission or your subcommittee or whoever's working on slopes, speak to folks who have some experience or have seen it, heard it, lived it, to add to their knowledge base. So I would encourage you to reach out to the public and ask us what are we seeing on the ground, because I want to prevent that from somebody else to going through that. That was a mess. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, Lorraine, it's your turn now.
Great, thank you, Josh. And Josh, by the way, thank you for the going through and educating us on the levels, the 3 levels too. I think a lot of times the public, it'd be great if we had something online with just kind of a primer like that, so we don't waste your time too. So, but I appreciate always being educated. I also had spoken to CCRPC about adding a topographical overlay to the planned growth areas. I'm very concerned with all the municipalities, and not so much that we're increasing rain amounts per year. What's happening is we're increasing how much rain happens in a shorter period of time. Precipitation has intensified in shorter periods of time, and the fluvial erosion, particularly along River Road, which of course impacts Saxon Hill and the industrial area there. We just saw that there was a new culvert that had to be fixed. We know certainly from CCRPC, they're at some of the funding levels for River Road, as well as like we see the north-south corridor for traffic along North Williston Road, which is, especially if Amazon goes there or for the businesses out of there, the flooding keeps increasing in that area. So certainly the slopes have become more and more important. So I really appreciate the work that Trevor and Paula have done in terms of looking at what other municipalities have done. I think it's super important to understand the soil maps as well in terms of those overlays. We look at the planned growth areas, and I hope that we, because the CCRPC is putting it back at the local level to say, well, we're giving you this is really based on the sewer core, which a lot of those sewer cores were developed in the 70s. So they're old. It's not that it shouldn't be based on the sewer core. Those decisions were made before we understood so much about the connection between what we cut down, where we build, and things like that. Really, we shouldn't be basing it just on the sewer core. It really should be a topographical overlay and the soil maps overlaid in terms of where the planned growth areas are. And I'm sorry that the regional level is not handling that, because it puts more pressure on the local level to do the right thing. I also want us to move in the area of saying no waivers, which in certain areas, certainly in the Saxon Hill area, the RPD, we do not allow the 100-foot or the 200-foot unless it's utility to be cut down for the buffer part, but we could do the same for the slopes, that it would be a no-go. I just want to see those hardened, because my concern is that the environmental impacts that are happening, we saw it in the floodplains in Barre and things that are going on, that is going to cost us even more in taxes. That my taxes go up, not down, every time we keep developing. If the development path that we were taking was working, my taxes should have gone down by now because we certainly started adding a lot more in Saxon Hill and businesses in 2015, and my taxes don't go down. And I see things like looking at the LDS stormwater reconstruction that we're doing now, and how the impervious surface was all the way up to the edge, and our PCP plan that we have to, I think, was $1 million, $2 million, we still haven't fully funded. I'm concerned that we're going to have more waters that we're going to have to mitigate and will be turned into impaired as well as we try to figure all these things out. So I appreciate the direction that you're moving in, because to me, the developer cart is way ahead of our infrastructure course in so many ways. And when I look at our town plan and what the town plan has been voted on over and over again, it was voted on before we separated, it's been voted on after it's separated. The same themes come up from the public. And I hope that what we do is we support the town plan, which is our overarching regulatory document. And I hope we shore some of those up quicker rather than later. Thanks.
Josh, if I could just add, I just want to clarify that we also have a minor amendment or procedure, which is only 2 steps, sketch and final. So it's not always a 3-step process. And I believe minor is for 3 lots or less.
Right, I was referring to Markup, which obviously is the 3-tier, but thank you for the correction. Patty Davis.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that both Cheryl and Lorraine really brought up some great points. And I have to say, one of the things I enjoyed the most when I was on the Planning Commission in 2022, 2023 time period there was I took a course from Jen Hilks on learning how to interpret and map out. It's called a BioFinder map. And you can do specific layers of whatever application you're looking at, and to find out what kind of soil it is. Is it loamy? Is it this? Is it that? It has a topographical map that you can look at that layer. It shows different layers, even where the rock formations are. It's fascinating. And I took the course from him while I was on the Planning Commission and tried to, as best I could, educate myself and do a BioFinder map before each meeting. So the Marcotte, application you're talking about, I remember very, very well how steep the slopes were just from the colors of the map. I still have it in my brain. So the reason I'm bringing this up is if there's someone from CCRPC on this call, I highly recommend that CCRPC educate or get somebody on your team to be a whiz and take this course from Jen Hilks. This guy, he's always on TV. He's on PBS a lot. It's a fascinating course, and I know it got even better than back in 2022 when I took it. I found it very helpful when I was on the Planning Commission. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thank you.
Josh, again, if I could pipe in to the last comment made, our former planner, Darren Shibler, works at CCRPC. So you've got good hands-on at the CCRPC.
And he is an Essex resident.
And he is an Essex City resident.
No,
Oh,
town.
right.
He lives across from Chapin
Yes,
Orchards now.
yes, my
I've
God,
seen him,
I
I've
issued
seen him
that
driving the
permit.
tractor. Gina Halpin Barrett.
Hi, thanks for doing this, you guys. I appreciate the information, and I like the breakout groups. I think that would be helpful. And if you guys could put, when you have your meetings, is there a way to put the notes in the agenda so that the public can read what you guys came up with before the meeting? There's no notes attached to each little subcommittee.
You mean the specific working group notes, like what Trevor just had?
Yeah. If you could just.
And I just didn't have them done in time.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just would be helpful. And then I was wondering if Trefer was doing some research, does it matter? Did you find if it mattered if the slopes were near waterways? Like if it was a 20% slope near a brook or near, because it all, to me, Saxon Hill is all feeding into the Winooski River, and did other towns add that consideration?
Yes, I mean, the 20% slope near a waterway, that's where you get increased stream flows, erosion into the waterway.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's more serious when you're adjacent to a waterway.
So did you find any towns had regulations that accounted for that? That if it's, this close to a waterway and you're putting in impervious surfaces near something that feeds into our water, which then feeds into the Lake Champlain, which we drink out of, kind of stuff. I was just curious if that was factored in. And then one more thing I was wondering if you were saying there were never waivers on 20% slopes? Did I hear that right?
No, what I said was that we should probably hold the 20%
Yes.
as a maximum.
As far as your recommendation, I understood that's what you were saying. But I mean, when I think it was Josh, were you talking about have you ever issued a waiver for a 20% slope? Has that happened recently? When I look it up, I can see that there were.
Or the DRB has recently.
I think it looks like there was one. There's a great thing called local minutes notes where you can quickly look up the history of meeting minute notes in your community. And when I just did that while you guys were talking, I found a few places where I think you have approved a waiver for 20% slopes.
Was that recent, Lorraine? I mean, yeah.
Gee, I know we sound alike. Sorry. We're gonna confuse everybody. I think there was one. It said Colonel Page Road approved in 2024. There was a waiver request for developing on slopes of 20% and greater, approved for lots number 2 and number 3. So that was a recent approval.
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure if what you were saying, Josh, was that we haven't really issued waivers for 20% or more ever.
I don't think I think it was that for Pinewood or.
Yeah, I was referring specifically to Pinewood when
Okay.
I was explaining that.
And it sounds like Senegal got some waivers for 20% slopes. Courier stated that Culvard was approved for high percentage of 20%. Reinhardt slopes are greater than 20%. Al Senegal's parcels have slopes greater than 20%, and his own commercial building has had slopes of greater than 20%. That's all.
So no.
That's it.
Do we have any? Yep. Do we have any further thoughts on steep slopes? We want to look at team buffer.
So what time is the meeting going till tonight?
So it's 8:23, and I do want to get through D because they wanted feedback from us.
Yeah. Do you
So
want to make that
how-
hold off?
Do you have anything earth shattering?
No, I mean, I feel bad to say,
Right,
invited
no,
Wayne
we-
here to
we
give
did,
his,
yeah, we
we
did.
just had to sit. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Dwayne from Trails and, he's sitting behind you from the Trails and Conservation Commission was gonna talk about buffers, but I don't think we have time. So he might have to come back next month. If he's up for it. But no, this gives me a little more time to do a little more research.
Okay.
What Gina just said about searching for waivers is really helpful, so
Mhm.
I'll pull up all the waivers
Okay,
for buffers.
that'll
so
give
me
you
to
more
do that.
time.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great idea, and this isn't something that we've talked about, but having the working groups information ahead of time, so it can
Yeah.
go into the
I think
packet,
so too.
just so
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
out there for everyone to see.
I think that's a really good point.
Yeah. Okay, we're skipping buffer then,
Sorry, Dwayne. Sorry.
but it'll be
You
a
can
better,
say if you
it'll be a
want.
better,
Yes.
better buffer.
We'll have all the waivers.
All the
so we
waiver,
can-
everything, okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, so D, update, review, and feedback from CCRP draft future land use map. So we had, I recall correctly, I had a question about the village center. Well, you said you get bars right there. Look at that, I've already been said. Specifically, the old village, the old town center.
Right.
Where that landed with 1B because it had been marked on the future use map as sort of dark purple.
Yeah,
And
so.
I had some questions, so
Yep.
if you would.
Yeah,
please.
so actually was talking with Darren and Maya just the other day, a couple days ago about this. And there's no reason why that can't change to, the lighter or the darker purple, which would be that village center
Mhm.
color. So it would still be considered, a center for the state designation, so it would still be that dark in the state designation,
Mhm.
but on the future land use map, it could be a more appropriate village center.
So like the Jericho color on this map?
Yeah, and also like the Susie Wilson Road area.
Right,
Is that?
yeah, exactly, that color.
Yeah.
And the fort as you go into Colchester.
Yeah, so, and one other thing that I had noticed there is that the boundaries of that on here don't really match the village center boundaries, but just the designated village center, so I think that those boundaries need to be changed.
Right, I saw that, lower, yeah. I think it was page 11 of that. Yeah, the village boundaries, yeah.
Yeah, there.
Yeah, I did have one question about, not to jump over, it, but the interim Act 250 exceptions, slide 10. I did not see a single difference between Chittenden County Transit Corridor exemption and designated village center one. Was qualifying locations supposed to read something about being on a bus line? You see where I'm-
I do, yeah, so that's possible that I mistyped there. But
I
you're
assume
right,
that
it was.
It was referring to like the darker blue on the map, right?
Right, yeah, so I think that is at the previous slide.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I was reading that correctly, because again,
Yeah.
didn't have my right glasses
Yeah.
today.
Yeah, so, yeah, there's nothing about, it shouldn't be the quarter acre or quarter mile distance as well, so
Right.
this is the interim exemption map here.
Yeah.
So it's showing, really the Route 10 Green Mountain Transit Loop that goes around. So the other question that the Regional Planning Commission is asking for an answer to, and it's really dependent upon the select board, but if the town is interested in pursuing the Tier 1B status, and the Tier 1A status is a conversation for a later time, because that wouldn't be, it's not until at least January of next year.
Right.
But the Tier 1B, again, just to remind everyone, is very similar, or really it's the same exemption that we have currently with the bus
The
route.
bus corridor, yeah.
So it's 50 units or fewer on a 10-acre or less parcel. And it's exemption from Act 250, just to be
Yeah,
clear,
Until
just for those.
January 1, 2027.
Yeah, well, for the current interim, but if the town were to say we want Tier 1B, whatever parcels that we would decide would get that exemption. As long as it's matching really what's on the future land use map. So they want to hear from the town, are we wanting to pursue Tier 1B status for anything? And if yes, what are you interested in? So looking, I think, at the map, so I think in my mind, I think we talked about this last time, but the obvious areas would be here, the mixed use
Right.
north and mixed use south
Yes.
on ETC next area. Our designated village center, potentially the transit route, but not necessarily anything in here. And then over in the Susie Wilson Road area, which is, again, designated
village.
for more for the village, yeah. And this is just my thought, and this is something just to bat around a little bit. I could see it being the exemption or Tier 1B status being, parcels along Route 15, even through the center here. But I'm not sure I would continue it down Jericho Road or Sand Hill Road, but on Route 117, maybe to the city line. So really it would be along the state routes, you know, to Essex Center here. You could say you'd want it to continue along Route 15 out this way. Or whatever, you know, that's just an idea to bounce.
Right, so is the CCRPC asking for us to delineate specific boundaries and at this table tonight agree to do 1B? Or is this just sort of, are you interested in 1B? Click here, yes.
They're going to want the select board in July, and there could be some flexibility there, but to say, yes, we want tier 1B and we want it for this area. So we need a specific map of parcels saying
Right.
this is what we're looking for.
I just wanted to know tonight was,
I think it's a lot probably to make a decision on tonight.
Right.
But the select board is gonna, Maya is gonna come from the Regional Planning Commission, come to the select board meeting in 2 weeks, and then come back in either June or July with hopefully getting a decision from the select board. So we still have some time. So I think this could be something, this gets moved up to maybe the top of the agenda
Right.
for our next meeting.
Are we ever going to consider 2 meetings a month?
I am definitely willing to consider that. It's not my call, but
Whose
look at your
call is
fellow, it's
I'd be-
yours.
I'd want all 7 of us to be here for that discussion.
Oh,
Yeah, I
absolutely.
wouldn't want to make that discussion. Maybe we can put that on the agenda for next month, but I wouldn't want
I mean, I don't think it would necessarily have to be every month, but there may be
as
times.
an option.
Yeah.
I think so too.
We do the same for the DRB. There's times where we have to have
Times
a
you need,
second.
times you don't, yeah.
Speaking for staff, I wouldn't want to see 4 meetings a month.
Right, and it just, the number of people who are cross-pollinating,
Yeah, that's true.
that was my initial thought,
Right.
and why the working groups, I think, once they
Yeah.
come forward with more stuff, I think 1 is reasonable, but maybe 1.5 on average. But for tonight, in principle, yes. I personally, in principle, think the 1B from basically 289 up to where, say, 15 in Sand Hill, again, the village designation,
Yeah.
basically. I think that makes sense. I have no. I
Yeah,
like
I
it.
do too.
I think that's where, that was what the whole point of ETC next, that was the whole point of the town plan, it makes sense.
Right. How about the Susie Wilson Road area? So this area here, so that also includes the fort.
I think that's appropriate. Yeah, I mean, we've always wanted to do something with the fort, so I reserve the right to say something different with the fort, because that was one of the working groups I was on, I want to say pre-COVID or something. We had sort of groups.
I know that the fort's been on the list.
It's always been on the list, and I had started to do something for the town plan, and the town plan obviously took precedence. But yeah, I think purple areas, connect purple areas with 15, and then Susie Wilson magenta. Yes, I think that's it. River Road, I don't know. That's not marked as of now, and especially since River Road, that area does intersect with the very slopes we were just talking about. I think it would be a little pause to jump right in and say, yes, we'd like to do River Road, especially since we're working on what we want to do vis-a-vis slopes, but purple areas and magenta areas, yes.
Maya has her hand up.
Oh, yeah, from the Regional Planning Commission.
Maya.
So she's-
Hi, I'm curious if it sounds helpful for, like, as we're kind of as you guys are workshopping it, and with what Catherine kind of suggested, if it would be helpful for the next time this discussion comes up, for there to be a draft overlay of these areas to kind of see more like parcel based versus having to kind of conceptualize it together. And I'm happy to sit with Catherine and GIS people to make that happen so that it's easier to edit.
Yes, I think that would be very helpful, and I think if we put this more towards the top of the agenda in June, we can get through it. I think it'd be fantastic.
So I'll just write notes and like get back with Catherine as you guys are kind of talking through it, so I know what the draft should we know what the draft should look like.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Honestly, I don't know how much more we need to hash out right now, because we pretty much described what we want the area to be. I think that does do it, and then we can, then top of the agenda, or reasonably top in June, we can then look at if this is in fact the area we wanted.
Yep.
But
And then at that point, it can be formalized to send on a recommendation to the select. board.
precisely, because it's not really a business item, it's an update and review. So it doesn't, again, and there's only 5 of us, it doesn't feel entirely right to commit ourselves, which is why I asked what the expectation was for this evening. But yeah, if you were to come back in June with something. We've got, sorry, member of the public.
Robert Lancet, what is the actual purpose of, is this just the state saying to the town, identify where you want to have housing and we'll grant you permits to get that done? type
So
thing,
what
or
this is
what's
part
the
of
whole purpose of this?
part of a much larger Act 181, which is a modification of Act 250, the 50-year-old land use where the state's involved, what the state restrictions are, development below a certain size, the state has to come in and do a tertiary, secondary and tertiary process. So Act 181 has said that certain areas of certain towns via this future land use map would be redesignated as such that those individual municipalities, in this case Essex obviously, could apply for exemptions from Act 250, which would mean if we decide as a PC, this area, we would like it to be tier 1B, that would mean that certain developments much larger than would currently be allowed to, if you will, escape 250 jurisdiction, could just be a town matter. And the idea behind that, the act also has lists of how much they expect each town, excuse me, each town's housing stock could/should expand if all these 1B exemptions were granted or pursued. And there's a whole, if you could actually put the table up, if you have it at the ready, if you don't mind.
Sure.
There's a table of what the state has said they would expect towns in Chittenden County to do. And why we're doing a Chittenden County regional planning map to say, okay, given what the state has suggested, here's what we think each town could do reasonably, and here's where we think that could happen. Yeah, thank you. So as you see, we'd be under suburban towns.
In 25 years,
In 25.
they would expect.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's not a requirement. If we don't get there,
Right.
it's okay. This is a goal that we're trying to get to. Meaning that we should, think about our zoning regulations if we're encouraging housing or making it harder. What can we do to try to get there? Looking at that medium range too, there's the low and the high, but really looking at the middle range, which isn't really too far off of where we are now. So it's, I don't think it's that much of a stretch. I should be looking at you guys, sorry.
Yeah, so the idea is that the state, the legislature rather, did go through and see what was reasonable for housing, where Act 250 may potentially have, I don't want to say stifled that process, but added an extra layer that could be removed in specific areas. This map is the state and Chittenden County Regional saying to the towns, here's where we think are the best spots in your town. What do you think? And so they've requested from us, maybe not tonight, most likely in June, to come up with a provisional map that then the select board would look at and we'd all say, okay. And then we'd apply for, as you heard, that 1B exemption, which would take Act 250 off the table for anything below 50?
50 units.
50 units.
Under, on a parcel that's under 10 acres.
Right. So parcel under 10 acres with under 50 units wouldn't have Act 250, again, if we pursue this whole process. Is that a hand?
Yeah.
Please, and then we're gonna wrap up.
Dwayne Barlow, Essex Town resident. Yeah, so along those lines, it's nice to know that these numbers aren't like a quota or anything like that, but at the same time, they should be meaningful. And so if this is like a trivial calculation based on the surface area of pink and purple, when those polygons actually overlap ravines and non-developable areas, it seems like these numbers would be less meaningful, even if they're non-binding or anything like that. So, I know Matthewtown Forest is included in that. Why would we use that for any sort of projections? And all of the ravines around the Tanglewood neighborhood and all of those are pink. So, yeah.
I mean, you heard the commentary or people saying exactly that thing about
Okay,
the
yeah.
topographical overlays are required, which is again, why we're not making any movements on this tonight.
Got it. Sorry, I missed that part.
Oh, okay.
I apologize.
Yes,
Mr. Chair, I'm wondering about Route 2A, because you mentioned some of the other state roads. Does it not have sewer? Why was 2A not included, or is it included? I just forget that it's there.
So looking at the map, let's see. Oops, wrong.
so just looking at the map, spitballing, it does look like it's closely correlated with the sewer core.
Right, so that's considered a planned growth area.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the map.
Yeah, up to about 289. Which again,
So from
Is it is
yeah, if you look from Essex Junction right up to 289, that is a corridor of planned growth, not downtown center or village center, but planned growth, which would, is that also 1B?
that could be. one.
Potentially 1B.
Yeah, anything that is in the pink
Yeah,
range could be.
right. I mean, that's like up for discussion, obviously. I think the priority are the purple and magenta. But I think next month we'll have a better look.
we're a village center, not a,
So the magenta village center there that you're seeing on this map is the fort and then Susie Wilson, basically.
okay.
And the purple area you're seeing is the proposed, well, not the proposed, but Essex ETC next.
Right.
Those are the two, and then a little bit of the historic village. Those are the spots we're definitely agreeing to, and then we're gonna look at other places next month, ideally with a topographical overlay to get a real sense. Because I think people have been very clear this evening about their preferences for topographical overlays.
Well, considering.
So if anybody has
Planned growth
any,
area, you might wanna think about air quality, that's for residential, right? Housing.
I mean,
Yep.
yeah, I mean, this is not our zoning map though either, like our zoning map is more nuanced than this, so our zoning map does have in these areas mixed use and, or just single commercial use. But this just is not getting to that level.
I'm thinking about Amazon. Trucks and air quality
All right,
and the number of residential areas around, that surround that area.
yeah, next month we will think about all these things.
Dive in.
That we're not rushing it tonight. All right, so we'll come back to that in June. And the other zoning regulations, can we also put that on for June?
Yeah.
So let's get to the minutes.
Oh,
Get those minutes. Sharon, did you see the de minimis stuff I sent you? I
I'm not yet, but.
was very proud for saying de minimis. I don't get to use Latin that much anymore.
Did you send that today?
Yeah, around 11:30, I want to say.
Okay, yeah. I did not, so I.
There was, I don't want to say it, but there was a Trevor name correction.
Trevor is giving me a carte blanche to know that I did it wrong.
However it's spelled.
Colin Johnson.
and I actually got my changes to her the day before today. So
Excellent.
not yesterday, but the day before.
So with all of that said, I will take a motion to approve the minutes of April 10th, 2025. So moved.
Second.
Oh,
I'm gonna give, I'm moved by Ian and seconded by Paula. Do we have any discussions on the minutes? I'm not gonna bring mine up because I did send them to you.
That's
They're-
fine.
They're just grammatical, like,
Yeah.
put a comma here, maybe rearrange that a
That's
little
fine.
bit, you'll see them.
Thank you.
I didn't get that, quite that detailed.
Thank you for that too.
I did have one thing that I don't think was small, line 48, 49. So between page 1 and 2.
Yeah.
It said he notices the, police chief. He noted that during his employment with St. Albans, he did not ever respond to the South Burlington facility.
Yeah.
He was referring to the Northwest Correctional and not South Burlington, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
That one didn't seem de minimis because I thought maybe I misheard, but I thought he was talking about in St. Albans, he didn't respond to St. Albans.
Thank you.
That's all I had in terms of serious.
Substantial. Okay, well, that's not bad. I'll take it.
And I defended Trevor's honor on line 145 in case you wanted.
What was it?
With a
Don't
V.
tell him.
It was with a V. It was with a V.
It's okay. I mean, I don't know why they did that. Anyways.
They?
My parents.
Okay. All right, anything from anybody else? All right, I will, all those in favor of approving the minutes as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? 5-0, they are approved. I will take, actually, other business.
I'll pass.
I was thinking. In which case, I will take yet another motion.
I move that we end the meeting.
Paula has moved to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I think I got Georgia for that one. Second, and then all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Dougie, could you bang the gavel again?
8:46
Look
PM.
at this. Go bump bump.
Oh, this was
Got
the
it.
wrong meeting.
Nice. You good?